Hi, I'm Mead, the Executive Chef at Locale restaurant at the Bortoli Winery in the Yarra Valley. Today we're here in the chefmasterclasses.com studio kitchen. Okay, what we're going to do is make my caramelised onion and goat's cheese Anglotti with pear and parmesan. So what we've got is 2 kilos of sliced onions. You can see they've just cut off the angle there, and that just takes that hard core base out of your onions. And we're going to cook that over a very low heat just to caramelise those onions right down till we have basically a jam, and that's going to be the major component of the filling of that pasta. The only thing we need to do with the onions is just get them on a very low heat. So we'll get some olive oil in the bottom of that pan. Just remember, these onions are probably going to take between 2 to 3 hours. It's just important that they're cooked over a very low heat and that all of the moisture that's in the onion will evaporate out of the onion before it actually starts to catch and caramelise on the bottom of the pan. And don't worry if your pan is very full, because as soon as these onions start to cook down, a lot of that moisture will disappear. All you've got to do is just keep an eye on it, give it a stir every now and then to make sure it's not catching, and then as we get further through the cooking process, it'll be more important to stir it more often and just check the consistency. The onion's now been cooking for around 3 hours. As you can see, it's just been a long and slow process of getting the liquid out of that onion and just letting it caramelise on the bottom of the pan. At this stage, there's only onion and a small amount of olive oil in that pan that we started with in the beginning. And once we get to this stage, finishing the filling is actually going to be quite quick. What we're going to do is we're going to add a small amount of sherry vinegar. And with this type of pasta, it can become quite heavy. So the reason we add the sherry vinegar is just to give a contrast there between the heavy flavours and just take the edge off that. And we're going to also add a little bit of that 8-year port. Once that liquid goes in there, we just want to raise it up to a high heat. And as soon as that comes to the boil, the liquid will start to reduce very quickly and it will almost create a jam. Okay, in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to recombine and come to the boil, we just add a small amount of milk to a pot. So what we're doing here is we're actually making a bechamel, or a white sauce, a very thick version of a bechamel, and that's just going to give us a binding agent in this mix. So to do that, we measure equal quantities of butter and flour, and we combine those together to make a roux. We add our flour to the butter, and we're just going to stir that to combine it. Our liquid is reduced out of our onion mix now, so we're going to add the hot milk to the cooked roux. At this stage, that will thicken extremely quickly. It's a very high ratio of butter and flour to milk. So what we're looking to do here is actually create a paste and create a binder that's going to hold that mix together and give it the body that it needs when it's cooked in a cooked pasta. So we need to cook this paste out a little bit just to make sure that we don't have that raw flour flavour taking over our filling. In the meantime, it's really important just to keep an eye on those onions. You want it to be almost sticking to the pot. If there's any liquid in there at all, that's going to affect the consistency of your finished filling. Once you're happy with that mix, you can just take that off the heat, and then we have all the ingredients that we need to finish our filling. So we're just going to transfer that first to the bowl of the KitchenAid. Then we combine that with our bechamel paste. Okay, at this stage, we're going to put that onto the KitchenAid and just let it mix through to combine those two ingredients. Add in our goat's cheese, and once that's mixed through, we're ready to cool the mix down. Okay, we've got our pasta dough here. You can see how to make that in the pasta making video. We now have our pasta that's ready to go. The onion and goat's cheese mix, just going to put that into a piping bag. So in this case, we're just using a mould that we have here. Also, I'm just keeping my pasta that I'm not using at the moment under a layer of cling film, or it could be a wet cloth as well. That's just to keep the moisture in that pasta so it doesn't dry out and become more difficult to use. This agnolotti that we're going to be making here, we just want to seal those with a little bit of egg wash, just a small amount on a pastry brush. Once we've egg washed our pasta, we can start to add the filling. So if there's an imaginary line down the centre of that pasta, we've put the filling to the back half. So this is exactly how we make our pasta at the Bortoli, at Locale restaurant. All of the pasta, the filled pasta that we're using, is made by hand. So there's a lot of time and effort and a bit of TLC that goes into each plate of pasta that goes out to the restaurant. So to make the agnolotti, we just take the pasta from the back, fold it straight over, seal it at the front there, and then just using your hands, your thumbs to work down the sides and make sure there's no pockets of air in there and that the pasta is sealed all the way to the corners. We've got a pot here of rapidly boiling salted water. Okay, so we just drop those Anglotti in, and they will take around 4 minutes. Meanwhile, we start the pan. We just start that with a small amount of butter. We've got our pear here that we've just finely sliced. We're going to add that to the pan. So any of these three wines would be great with this dish. We've got the La Boheme Act 3 Yarra Valley Pinot Gris. We've got the Bortoli Chardonnay 2011, and we've also got the Bortoli Pinot Noir, the estate grown. Once we've got some colour into our pears, we're going to add a small sprinkling of salt. At this stage, we've got a couple of minutes left with our filled pasta, so we want to add a small amount of chicken stock. And the one trick that we always use in the restaurant is to finish the pasta in the sauce. It's going to soak up the excess flavour, and that's going to make it a beautiful and emulsified product. If you can't see the change in colour of the filling there as a contrast to the part of the pasta where there's no filling, then you probably have a pasta that's a little bit too thick, and it might just need a little extra couple of minutes in the cooking time. And we're just going to emulsify that stock now with a little bit of Parmesan. So just a small sprinkling of Parmesan in there, and the sage. So when you start to move your pan, you can see there's not a lot of stock coming back to the base of the pan. You know that the sauce is starting to emulsify and cling to the pasta, and that's always a great sign that you have a good dish. Okay, so there we have our finished agnolotti with caramelised onion and goat's cheese. And it's also good to have some fresh Parmesan over the top, as well as the small amount that we sprinkled into the sauce. A great wine to go with our pasta would be the La Boheme Act 3 Pinot Gris and Friends. It's just a lovely wine from the Yarra Valley estate. So good luck in your pasta making, and enjoy. Cheers.